Mark,
Huh?
I was wondering if Mark heard about the off and on, the reading in the back.
Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Param Om. Okay, so and I'm over the text here. We have seen on the verse 34, chapter 16, rightly. We have here, it says, I shall tell you the reason for this. Although consciousness is unknowable, it is still realizable by the pure mind. So before that, we saw the previous verse talking about all we need in order to realize the self is to abandon all other perceptions. So the self is not going to be perceivable as an object. So you don't need to concentrate on the self, because the self is not an object of concentration, cannot be objectified. But as we know, in our some Vedantic Sampradaya, we bring the mind to the scriptures that are going to reveal the true nature of the self, of the I. So there is a process of bringing the mind disconnect from the objects of the world and connect to the self. The self cannot be connected, but we can connect to the scriptures. Disconnect and connect to the scriptures that has the potential, have the potential to reveal the true nature of the self as the nature of the very seeker, inquirer. It's very intellect, it's very mind, it's very existence. So we elimination of all other objects, it's said here to be what is needed for every time we have a contact and an experience of any given object. We cannot never contact and have a two experience at the same time. But self-realization differs from that, because it requires only one condition, which is moving away from the perception of the world. So this is a concept that we, as we know, we have to look into it very carefully, because just withdraw, elimination, or rejection, or moving away from all objects of perceptions not necessarily translates self-realization, and we understand that. But let's follow the logic here, because I have the impression that the Treya later on is going to clarify this point as well. So it's not just about enough to eliminate all perceptions and to be in an empty mind in which there are no thoughts or objects appearing. Because it may lead to self-recognition, but it may lead to a very beautiful experience of bliss, peace, satisfaction, and so on, that a lot of the time is not translated into self-recognition, self-knowledge. So I shall tell you the reason for this. Although consciousness is unknowable, it is still realizable if the mind is pure. So what is a pure mind in that sense? Or it is an empty mind. So yes and no. We need an empty mind, a very, very quiet mind, silent mind. But but to do our inquiry at the very end, a very subtle inquiry, which is remembering the teachings, the final declarations of the Upanishads in respect to the true nature of the I. We need a pure mind. The self is going to be realized that if the mind is pure. And the pure mind not necessarily means a empty mind, a mind in a nivikalpa samadhi. So this situation of it is knowable, but it's not knowable in the sense that we all know things in the objective dualistic universe. So it's something that even the learned ones, no, the how you say the pandits, the academics, the scholars, even them, they are a little bit confused at the times in which way the self is knowable, in which way it is not knowable. External perceptions of the mind are dependent on two conditions, as we have seen. The first is elimination of the previous perception so that you can hold your focus on the new perception. And then it's one perception, one contact at the time. But for that, you have to let go of the previous one. From other perspective, the mind is in an indifferentiated state where there is absence of any kind of perception. Therefore, concentration on a particular item is necessary for the perception of external things. It is unavoidable. The mind jumps projecting one image, one thought image, one after the other, and it needs to let go of the previous one. Therefore, concentration on a particular item is necessary for the perception of external things. Since consciousness is the self and not apart from the mind, concentration on the self is not necessary for its realization. So it is enough that other perceptions, namely thoughts, should be eliminated from the mind, and then the self will be realized. Again, the same persistence on that point. So you don't need to bring the mind to the self. The self is not an object of knowledge or concentration, but we say that we need to bring the mind to the scriptures that are going to reveal the nature of the I. If a man wants to pick out, is this noise in the background too disturbing to you guys? How is that going?
I don't hear it at all.
No? Okay.
No.
If a man wants to pick out one particular image or thought among a series of passing thoughts and objects in front of him as reflections on a mirror, he must turn his attention away from the rest of the picture. So we're going to bring attention to one picture and fix it on that particular one. If, on the other hand, he wants to see the space in which all these images, these pictures, these namarupas are appearing, if he wants to see the space, it is enough that he turns away his attention from the namarupas that are appearing in space. And then what he's doing, he's not paying attention to anything. And is he paying attention to space? Maybe, maybe not. Space is so subtle, and most of the time we discount it as well. We discount the self, the light of consciousness that illumines and reveals our moment-to-moment experiences. And we discount the space. There was a Christian at the time, years ago, he wrote a satsang using an analogy of gravitation that we even discount gravitation as well, So they are very common to our experience. They are there, but we overlook. And say, so he just moved his attention from the pictures, and the space manifests without any attention on the space itself by the part of this person. Why? Because space is immanent everywhere and is already reflected there. However, it has remained unnoticed because the interspatial image dominates the scene. Same thing. So now we have the analogy of space. So the most common experience, you go into a place and then it's a hall. Yeah, there should be there a lot of chairs and hundreds of people, and then you go there and there is nothing. Yeah? And then almost invariably people are going to say, so did you find something there? No, there was nothing there. There was nothing there. So people are going to discount I consciousness was there, yeah, to witness and to establish that there was no other people, things, or situations there, huh? And we discount the space as well. Yeah? It's like I say, oh, there was something there, chairs and people were there. No, what was there? It was full of space, full of space. So the space being the support of every object because it accommodates object is all manifest. If you know, if only the attention is diverted from that the panorama, in that way we see the space. But we see, but we don't see. Now, that's my point. In the same way, consciousness is the space, the support, the conscious existence that supports the existence of all objects. It is all pervasive and always remains perfect like space, much more perfect than space, pervading the mind as well. Diversion of attention from other items is all that's necessary for self-realization. Or do you say that the self-illuminant can ever be absent from any place? Knock a corner. So yes, so the self is the more subtle, is the light of knowledge and consciousness, and it's always ever present. Yeah, but do I need to know about that? Yes, I need to know about that. Otherwise, what? Otherwise, I'm going to experience the void, emptiness, nothing, and I'm not even going to consider that there was space. And the bottom line is that you need knowledge to recognize space. You need knowledge of gravity to recognize gravity in our moment to moment of experience of life. No? And you need an even more subtle knowledge, which is self-knowledge, to recognize consciousness, without which we don't experience anything, neither gravity nor space either. No? There can indeed be no moment or spot from which consciousness is absent. This can be established by knowledge. By knowledge in the intellect. There can indeed be no moment or place from which consciousness is absent. Its absence means their absence also. If there is no consciousness, there is nothing else. Therefore, consciousness of the self becomes manifest by mere diversion of attention from things or thoughts. Realization of self requires absolute purity only and no concentration of mind. For this reason, the self is said to be unknowable, meaning not objectively knowable or available. So realization of the self requires purity. Yes, of course. And what is purity of mind? And says here that it requires no concentration of mind. So it does not require concentration. But at the same time, without concentration, we don't have a pure mind. A pure mind encompasses also a focused mind, a concentrated mind. All of that is is within the definition of purity of mind. But here, purity of mind is being presented as empty mind, mind without any thought. which is not the Vedantic definition of purity of mind. So here the text, it moves a little bit away from Vedanta in that sense, but I don't remember what is going to be the closing around this subject with Dattatreya. Therefore, it was all said that the sole necessity for self-realization is purity of mind. The only impurity of the mind are the thoughts. To make it thought free is to keep it pure. Again, so it's not really in agreement, yeah, in alignment with Vedanta, this passage of this text. It must now be clear to you why purity of mind is insisted upon the realization of self. How can the self be realized in its absence? You know? So you have something to say about this contradiction in respect to the teachings of Upanishads, because the text here really diverge from the purity of the teachings, let's say, our teaching tradition.
Yeah, I think this is an example of exactly why one needs a teacher and can't get this knowledge from a book. Because, I mean, maybe this is why so many of Ramana's students are confused about.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
You know.
And this is the confusion. The confusion is that self-realization is a state of empty mind. To begin with, self-realization is not a state. Self-realization is a realization that I am the light of consciousness, in which all the states of mind are possible and keep changing and moving. And some I like, some states I don't like. A mental state is a very subtle object, because a mental state is the condition of the instrument by which we experience the world. But it's itself, this mental condition is an object in relation to I consciousness. So the mental state is an object, and we need to have a pure, a pure instrument of perception and knowledge, so that we can perceive things as they are, and we can perceive the world from the standpoint of the Upanishads, from the Vedantic vision. So all of this is necessary, but the idea that enlightenment is an empty state, mental state, pure, with no thoughts, this is a misleading affirmation, because as we know, self-knowledge is not a state. Self-knowledge is a clear, simple, and profound conviction in respect to the fact that I am consciousness, and my mind goes through many states. Some states I like more, some states I like less, and then depending on these states, I'm going to experience access the world differently, because it's my primary instrument to experience and know. And the mental state is important. And Nirvikalpa Samadhi is a mental state, and the nature of every state is change, beginning, middle, and end. And the realization of the self has nothing to do with realizing something that begins and ends. Self-realization and realization of that which is never beginning, never end, never not present, as the light of consciousness, illumining the world, shining in my intellect. So I am that consciousness. So this is self-knowledge. But here, Dattatreya presents the yoga notion that enlightenment is a state of empty mind. And an empty mind without any thought is what a pure mind is. And if you go into this empty mind, and then self-knowledge is going to take place, which is not the case. It's not the case. A lot of people get confused and get stuck with this beautiful state of an empty, silent mind. But as James likes to say, silence is not going to object your self-ignorance, you know. Silence has no problem whether you are, you know, you believe to be a state or believe to be consciousness. It's going to just be there, available for experience. But it's not going to remove self-ignorance. You have any question or doubt in respect to that, Mark?
No, I don't, Arlindo. I was thinking that with a pure mind, only with the teachings of Vedanta will you actually realize the self. Like you say, you need the teachings as the background. If you have the teachings, you know, very well affirmed in your mind, then a pure mind will actually work for realizing the self. But without the teachings, no.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you can feel and see the silence and the beauty there. But like you say, when your mind changes, it's gone again. And,
exactly.
So,
because after all, the problem is self-ignorance. It is a mistaken identification or identity with the body, mind, and its states. So, and this can only be resolved or neutralized or removed or cancelled with knowledge. So, and then we need knowledge to cancel ignorance. We suffer due to this mistaken identity with the instrument of experience. We need the knowledge that is going to cancel that mistaken identity, and then you establish yourself as consciousness, the more subtle. And so there is no other way. We need knowledge. It's very subtle. The mind has to be very pure, but we need those vrittis, as we have determined in our last class as well. It must now be clear to you why purity of mind is insisted. The self can never be realized in the absence of a pure mind. Or how is it possible for the self not to be found gleaming in the pure mind? All the injunctions in the scriptures are directed towards this end, and this end alone. For instance, unselfish action, devotion, and dispassion have no other purpose in view. So he is saying that purity of mind is insisted. How can the self be realized in the absence of purity of mind? And how is it possible for the self not to be found, not to be realized in a pure mind? So the self is more often than not realized when the mind is quiet. Because a Rajasic mind is going to provide us with an experience of thoughts and objects which are standing with every thought that appears in our mind. We have the picture of the object. So how is it possible for the self not to be realized in a pure, empty mind? All the injunctions in the scripture direct towards that. All the talks about unselfish actions, devotion, and dispassion, and all those things of the Karma Yoga paths, they are meant to produce this purity of mind. But the point I want to make here is, so the self, how is it possible for the self not to be shining in the pure mind? The self is always shining in all states of mind. The self is even shining in a depressed mind. The self is shining in a Rajasic mind. So the idea that the self shines only in an empty mind, or a pure mind, or a sattvic mind, it's a little bit dangerous, because the self is always shining. It feels better when the self shines in a mental condition which is sattvic, because in there are no desires and fears playing. and then we have a sense of our conscious existence deprived of desires and fears, and then it feels wonderful, and in most cases, we realize the self in a quiet moment, but not necessarily quiet moment, like most people believe. Not necessarily. We need to realize the self, we need a certain purity or quality, mental qualities, but it can be realized even in a moment of action and interaction. I mean, if you remember, I was getting ready to go to do shopping to my restaurant. I was changing my clothes in the bedroom. I used to live there in Washington State, and then I realized, oh, I am, now I see it, I am consciousness. And I was busy thinking of what I had to do for my restaurant, you understand? So the self can be realized at any moment, but the mind needs to be already working on this inquiry for a certain time, and somewhat obsessed by it, and then it flashes. The final understanding flashes, no, clicks, and then you see, oh my God, how could I have missed it before? I am the self, I'm conscious, and it's all the time shining. It's even shining now that I'm getting ready to do shopping to the restaurant. It shined when I was in bliss, in meditation. It shines even when I'm in deep sleep. I mean, the self must be there, right? But it's more easily recognized, the self, when the mind is qualified, when the mind is more sattvic, more quiet, and that explains somehow why a lot of people. I met a few people that have had a clear experience of the self, and they tend to say, no, I knew that I was that self, I was that. I realized the consciousness was there. I realized I am this consciousness. So some people have a glimpse of this, but somehow, because the mind did not go through a certain degree of purification, those ragas and diversions remain there, disturbing and producing more and more notions and ideas that I need something to complete myself. Desires and fears appear. So the equation here is the mind has to be somewhat prepared, purified, qualified, refined. But there is no need for total purity, much less. There is no need for an empty, free, thought-free mind. It's just that the mind has to be qualified to the extent that I can understand that I am consciousness and everything is only consciousness. And I am full, I am purna, so I'm okay, satisfied, and so on. So once we get that, the concern about holding a sattvic mind. You see, in some passage we say that the primary goal of Vedantin is to cultivate, develop, and maintain a sattvic mind. Why? Because you want to do yonididhyasana, you need to have a good mind. You understand? But it does not mean that you have to hold a sattvic mind at all times. So, try to run a restaurant without a rajasic mind. You're gonna fail. You understand? So it's just what it takes. Some sattva guna in that equation, in that cocktail of the three energy, so that I can get the clarity in respect to my true identity, my true nature. Because 52, transcendental consciousness, the self, is manifest only in the stain-free mind. So maybe he's just encouraging Parashurama to go. I know this is Janaka. Is trying to motivate the guy to go into deep meditation somewhat, because it for some it's a part of the process, samadhi, yoga, and things like that. So this transcendental consciousness, the self, is manifest only in the stain-free mind. No, it manifests at all minds. It's all the time shine, even if it's a rudimentary mind, if it's a very, very unsophisticated mind, unrefined mind, the self-consciousness is there shining in all kinds of minds, sometimes doing horrible, cruel things. But the self is there, consciousness is there, available to all. But you need to be qualified with certain qualities of purity, mental, emotional purity, intellectual, to recognize this ever-shining consciousness. Consciousness is shining everywhere. But how can a mind, really dense, rude, gross, and violent, emotionally violent, how can a mind have the capacity to realize? But still, we hear that sometimes people who are never in the spiritual world come in a moment of realization, in a moment, in a mental condition that was not qualified for it. Understand? But the person has a glimpse. So after Janaka had spoken thus, Ashtavakra continued to ask, "O king, if it is as you say, that the mind made passive by elimination of thoughts is quiet, pure, and capable of manifesting supreme consciousness, then deep sleep will do the job, since it satisfies your condition, and there is no need for any kind of effort." So this is another argument. So we are all blissful and full, and the mind is totally without any thought. It's a thought-free mind in deep sleep, and it feels good. But the mind is not pure. Why the mind is not pure? Because the impurity of the mind was suppressed in the deep sleep. It does not reflect. There is too much tamoguna, and then the impurities are not reflecting, but impurities are there. And furthermore, in the state of deep sleep, you are not conscious of anything. You have no access to knowledge, and much less self-knowledge. You don't have any experience of any object, subtle object, and much less you do not have your conscious intellect to gain knowledge. Therefore, the deep sleep is not going to do the job. Otherwise, everybody would feel full, whole, and complete and satisfied, at least for until midday. Okay, I had a beautiful sleep. I see now I understood. My mind was so pure, and I saw my nature as Ananda and so on. And no, we come out of the deep sleep, and we are totally ignorant as before. So, but the Brahmin has questioned Janak, and the king replied, "I will satisfy you on this point. Listen carefully." Maybe here Janaka is going to begin to explain the difference between deep sleep and empty mind, and a wise mind, a wise, qualified mind. The mind is truly abstract in deep sleep, but then its light is screened by darkness. So how can it manifest its true nature? So it's very, very, very abstract in deep sleep. It goes to its causal formation or condition. Well, so, and it's in there, but it's dark. There are no reflection occurring in that. Why? The mind has just lost its shining qualities. Sattva guna has given space to more tamaguna, and then it cannot reflect anything. A mirror covered with star does not reflect image, but can it reflect space? No, no, it cannot. It cannot even reflect space, which is enough in that case that images are eliminated in order to reveal the space reflecting the mirror. No, in the same manner, the mind is covered by the darkness of tamaguna and rendered unfit for illuminating thoughts, and much less unfit to recognize its self-luminous nature. Would such eclipse of the mind reveal the glimmer of consciousness? No. Would a chip of wood held in front of a single object to exclusion of all others reflect the object? No. Reflection can only be occur in a reflecting surface and not in all surface. Similarly, also realization of the self can only be within a conscious, alert, calm mind, and not with a stupefied one. So here we have again the room for the analogy of the mind, which is very reflective, such as a lake without ripples. Now there is no breeze, there is no wind, and then it becomes like a mirror without any ripple. And then we see the reflection of the sky on that lake. So similarly, the mind needs to be with that kind of reflectivity. So meaning to say it needs to be in a conscious, alert mind, reflecting the skies and everything. And then if the mind is too rajasic, what happens? It's going to be like ripples in the lake that are not going to clearly reflect the sky and the clouds and whatever is there above the lake. So if the mind, if the lake, it becomes muddy because there was some rain coming from somewhere, and then a lot of mud came, and then again tamaguna, the mind is not going to nicely reflect the image above. So likewise, we need a mind with a good degree of reflection in the awakened state, so that we can shine as the intellect, as the mind, to understand our environment, our field of action, interaction. But furthermore, we need a mind with a good concentration of sattva guna now, or portion of sattva guna, that it can understand its environment, and can make a good reading of one environment, and can also hold the understanding that this is all Maya, and I, consciousness, am the only reality. So the mind needs to have sattva guna to understand Dharma from a Dharma, and furthermore to understand its very nature as consciousness. Yeah. So I have my brother calling me. Just give me just a moment. Let me do one thing here. It may be something. How can I pause it? I know that okay, I'm pausing for 1 minute. Okay, so the last thing we were seeing here is that consciousness, yeah, is going to reflect, and in deep sleep it does not have any reflection. Therefore, there is no chance we can get knowledge or self-knowledge, any knowledge in deep sleep. And the mind was resolved not by knowledge or by sattva guna. Yeah? A mind was resolved by tamoguna in deep sleep. So just like a lake, yeah, or a mirror full of tar or dust will not reflect anything. Newborn babes have no realization of the self, for they lack knowledge, they lack alertness. Yeah? They are blissed out, as it seems at times, but they lack knowledge. They lack even, I don't know, it's difficult to tell how these babies, we have been babies there, but we don't know exactly how we experience ourselves in the world because the mind was not there fully developed. Moreover, pursue our analogy of a tarred mirror. The tar may prevent the image from being seen, but the quality of the mirror is not a fact. For the outer coating of tar must be reflecting the interior of the mirror. This is very beautiful. So just imagine we have a mirror, and then there is a layer of tar or dust, a very thick dust. Yeah? And consciousness likewise, even in deep sleep, there is this coat of tar, coat, of tamoguna. And then the mind, the consciousness is still there. Like I was saying before, it's all the time shining, even in deep sleep. But there is a cover, there is a tar that covering the mirror, but it cannot reflect the image outside. But the mirror itself is not a fact, and furthermore, the mirror is reflecting what? Reflecting the dust, the tar. There is a coating of tar in the interior, yeah, between the surface and the tar. There is a reflection there, because everything reflects on the mirror, but nobody can see. Yeah? So also the mind, though diverted from dreams and the wakefulness, is still in the grip of dark sleep and not free from qualities. So it's not free from qualities. So the mind remains unpurified because it's just a layer, yeah? a coating of ignorance, that suppress or any possible reflection, like the tar on the mirror. But the mirror is beautifully there, even reflecting the tamoguna, reflecting the tar, reflecting the layer of dust. So it's still, the mind is still in the grip of dark sleep and holding its qualities. This is evident by the recollection of the dark ignorance of sleep when one awakes. So consciousness is still remain there, as pure light of consciousness. And that consciousness, which is not reflecting much anything due to the layer of tar, is still there, and it's reflecting what? Deep sleep. It's reflecting total ignorance, not knowing. And consciousness is there, and the proof is it is there, it is evident, and I know it's evident because in recollection, once I wake up, I know that I had a very beautiful experience of satisfaction when I awake. I will now tell you the distinction between sleep and samadhi. Listen attentively. So this may be interesting, a distinction between sleep and samadhi. There are two states of mind. Are you there? Okay, sometimes I have to see you guys again because I'm reading on my screen. There are two qualities of mind, illumination and consideration. Two states of mind. The first of them is association of the mind with external objects, and the second is deliberation on the object seen. Illumination is unqualified by the limitations of objects. Deliberation is qualified by the limitations pertaining to the object seen, and is the forerunner of their clear definition. So this is good stuff. So there are two states. One is the natural reflect consciousness that effortlessly contacts the world of objects. But as we know, so many things pass through our minds. But unless I bring my consideration to certain objects, they are just passing, and I'm not deliberately paying attention to anything. It's just passing, like reflections on a mirror. But the mirror is not being focused on any one of those images. So when I look into an image and then I start having thoughts, deliberated thoughts in respect to that object. Or do I like it? No, I like better. Is it more or less what I was expecting? And so on. Illumination is unqualified. So illumination is just like the power of consciousness that illumines, revealing the world. And it is unqualified, is indifferentiated. The light of consciousness illumines everything the same way the sunlight illumines everything, and it has no disregard of whatsoever, whether the scene is a beautiful scene or not. Indiscriminately, consciousness, like the sunlight, illumines in and everything. Illumination is unqualified by the limitations of objects. So the attributes and qualities that defines and limits the objects, it does not matter anything to the illuminating aspects of the mind. Deliberation is qualified. Deliberation is when the mind, which is absolutely unqualified, meaning to say it's not really considering the attributes of that object, the moment that focuses in one object, it qualifies its thoughts in respect to the attributes of the object. Deliberation is qualified by the limitations pertaining to the attributes of the object that I'm seeing, and it's the forerunner of the clear definition. So we define the world through the qualities and attributes of every one of the configurations we experience in our minds. The mind first notes the thing in its extended vision. The impression is received only after noting the thing in its known extensive nature, and becomes deeper on musing over the first impression. The mind first notes the thing in its extended vision. And then so the vision is wide, and then note something. The impression is received only after noting the thing in its known extensive nature. So your concentration, you bring the focus to one of those objects, and becomes deeper on musing over the first impression. And then we can go deeper into the observation of that object, trying to understand what it is. There is no distinction noted in the preliminary stage of simple illumination, the nature of the state of the mind, illuminating its surrounding, illuminating its environment. In the first stage, there is no distinction. Every object is equal. Why? Because no object has caught my attention. But then I see something, I see someone that caught my attention. And then the focus comes, and then I start going to define, to try to see the qualities of that object and so on. Before the thing itself, the object is not defined in my mind. I do not have any deliberate thoughts in respect to that thing or that person. So therefore, the state of illumination is said to be unqualified. The thing becomes defined later on, and it's said to be such and such, and so and so. That is the perception of the thing after the liberation. The liberation is again of two kinds. Now it says that the liberation of two kinds. The one is the actual experience, and it's said to be fresh, whereas the other is cognition, cogitation over the former, and it's called memory. Interesting. The mind always functions in two ways. Yes. Good. Let me go back to.
I'm sorry for the interruption. So are we talking now about the influence of vasanas on the perception?
Well, I don't know if we have got that far in the explanation of the Tatreya of the king here, but when we see something, we see through the lens of our impressions, our memory, which is these two kinds of deliberation. So we see things through our tendencies. A tendency basically is what I like and what I like more, what I like less, and what I do not like. So I'm focusing on something according to my likes and dislikes, which is a function of our impressions, mental impressions of vasanas. Yeah. So Jesus is part of the liberation, but he's pointing to the fact that there are two kinds of deliberate perception, because you perceive something and then immediately the first thing that comes is it good or bad? I like or I don't like it. It's a threat to my security or not. So we start seeing like that, and then we can very quickly address the situation, the object, and determine. Okay. But the other thing is later on, as you were saying, is just remembering and keeping that in mind. And then we develop the impressions, that brings about this kind of mental state, but it's based on my own prativasical state, you understand? Because even if I'm no longer in contact with an object, I'm still holding it here, and I'm just remembering and then trying to understand better the object. The thing is no longer in front of me. I mean, human relationship, when we are young or not young, we fall in love, and you see, you got someone, somebody that in the middle of the crowd caught your attention, and then you develop an interest there, and then your mind is there, and then somehow if it holds a strong impression, such as, oh, now I love this person, I'm going to keep thinking about that person, as we all know. And let me see if he says a little bit more here. In the preliminary state, there is only the mind, the state that illumines. The thing is not yet defined, meaning to say, I'm not fascinated, I'm not having any rejection, you know, there is no likes and dislikes. I just contact that. And then it's a kind of a mental unqualified state. It's like the objects of indifference, you understand? So there are three kinds of contacts we do with objects. One is I like it, I want it. The other is I don't like it and I want to avoid it. And the third one is indifference. Indifference is unqualified, no? Which would be the goal with self-knowledge, is to neutralize objects of desires and fears, to bring about this positive indifference, or this state of equanimity in regards to the object, because I know that no object is going to really make me happy, because happiness is my nature. No? So the thing becomes defined later on. The liberation is again of two kinds. One is the actual experience at the moment of the contact with the object, and that is fresh. It's said to be the fresh at the moment, whereas the other is the liberated contact, which is a byproduct of our memory, cogitation over the former contact, which the example of find someone that you like and then later on hold that memory and keep there, you know, cogitating and thinking and projecting more and trying to understand. And usually we project a lot in those cases. No? So dreamless slumber is characterized by the illumination of sleep alone, and the experience continues unbroken for a time. So now he's going back to the deep sleep and said that, so there are these states now in the awake state. So you have the state illumination and consideration. We consider things once something catches our attention. And then on the consideration side, there is one that is happening freshly as we contact things. And there is also another level of consideration after I have contact something, but that something held a strong impression in my mind, so that I keep remembering and working upon that, you know, around my desire to keep it or avoid it. Sometimes it's the fear that makes us preoccupied, so that I don't get in contact with this object of experience. And sometimes it's the attraction for something that makes me preoccupied to have it, rather than to reject it or avoid it. So those are the two levels of deliberation. One is happening freshly in the moment, the other is the impressions, the memories that it left in my mind. Two ways. And then he goes back to the dreamless state, which is characterized by illumination of sleep alone. And the experience continues unbroken for a time. Dreamless slumber is characterized by the illumination of sleep alone, and the experience continues unbroken for a time, whereas the wakeful state is characterized by the liberation repeatedly broken up by one thought after the other thought. And it's therefore it's said not to be ignorance, because there is knowledge, experience knowledge of the objects, and sleep is ignorance, meaning to say there is nothing to be known, and even my knowing entity, my knowing instrument, as the body mind, is not consciously there. My mind is totally covered by this tamoguna. Sleep is a state of nescience. Thought, it consists of illumination alone, yet it's said to be ignorance. So consciousness is there, it's illuminating tamoguna. Tamoguna prevents the mind from reflect duality and having an experience. experiencer and experience and the object of experience. So all of that is gone once the mind is covered by tamoguna, but the consciousness is there. So in that state, thought, it consists of illumination alone, yet it's said to be ignorance for the same reason as the light thought luminous is said to be insentient. I'm going to stop here, and it's a little bit more tiring to do this. First, I did not prep this class today. I had other things to go and do with my father. And not to see you guys is a little bit also not that much fun. And it's a nice passage in the book, and we're gonna meet again this coming Thursday or Friday, and I'm going to read a little bit more and to be in a better environment with my two laptops, and then we're gonna go deeper into this subject. Anything from you, Mark?
No, just to say you've done brilliantly, Arlindo, and thank you.
Okay.
Tell Sylvia we look forward to having her back.
Yes, yeah, I will. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, Namaste. We meet again this coming Thursday. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.
Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.